Hello there, this is Stephanie, Social Media Coordinator for IATEFL YLTSIG. Today with me is Stanley, who works for the British Council in Mexico. Hello Graham, so nice to have you with us today.
Hello Stephanie, thank you for inviting me. It's nice to be here.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. So tell us a little bit about the work you do in Mexico and for the British Council.
Well, my job title is English for Educational Systems Lead for the Americas, which is a bit wordy. What it means is I support and have an overview of the projects, the English projects that the British Council does in the Americas. So everywhere from Mexico down generally into Uruguay and Argentina, for example.
Yeah, and from what we've been chatting earlier, you told me something about your experience with remote teaching. Now it's become remote emergency teaching. So what insights can you give us about your experience prior to this pandemic?
Yes, well, I've been very much involved in a very large remote teaching project to primary school students in Uruguay. Working in partnership, the British Council has been doing that with an organisation called Plan Sabal, which is directly under the Uruguayan government. We teach 80,000 students remotely, offering them English lessons which otherwise they would not be able to have because of a lack of teachers.
I see. So that was it is for a humanitarian cause, basically. Now we are obviously facing a very different situation. Teachers all over the world have had to transition to remote emergency teaching practically overnight. So what tips could you give? What advice do you have to share? Anything, any particular activities or anything interesting that, you know, the teachers might try out in this situation?
Yes, of course. I think there's so much you can do. I think that's the thing. Most teachers at the moment feel a little bit overwhelmed with the choices that you have. I think so. One of the things I have been particularly interested in, which we were talking about just earlier, is the idea of adapting activities that you do normally with face-to-face in a face-to-face classroom to the new online environment. And one of the things I'm particularly interested in at the moment, which I think there's a lot of potential for, is this idea of interactive storytelling, in particular with an escape room scenario.
Okay, so can you explain a little bit about this kind of situation, how to transfer this escape room challenge onto an online platform?
Sure. Well, most people now, I think, know what an escape room is. Basically, it's a game where you're confined with a group of other people in a space and given a limited amount of time to escape the space normally. And that usually involves having to solve puzzles, look for clues, open locks, etc. Well, I think the online experience is more about related to role-playing games. So if anyone has ever played a role-playing game, and the traditional role-playing game such as Dungeons and Dragons, for example, that is about someone telling a story and the others, players, in this case students, telling the person telling the story what they will do in those circumstances. So Stephanie, I could say, looking at the background here, I could say suddenly you wake up in a strange, colourful street without any people. You can see cobbles, pillars, and various cafes, etc. What do you want to do? And then you would actually tell me what you would want to do, what you'd actually do, thinking of yourself in that situation. That's how you would start, really. So you can organize it. You can arrange it, design it, if you like, to cover any type of vocabulary. It's good if you illustrate it with photographs or illustrations such as this. And the objective is to give something stimulating, some kind of provoke the curiosity of the learners, to be able to get them to tell you what they want to do, to promote speaking. And it's a live listening, so it can be adapted by the teacher to any level, really. You grade your language to your teachers, to your students, sorry.
Okay, so if it's a challenge then, to like a times challenge, this escape room activity, how could it be designed? I mean, is there some templates that one uses, or one needs a particular program to design this kind of challenge?
Not really. That's the beauty of it. I think what the teacher needs to do is design something that is appropriate to whatever learners, age group and level that you're teaching. It works particularly well, I think, with upper primary or lower secondary learners. And what I would do is start with your learning objectives, your outcomes. So what do you want to achieve by doing it? Once you have that in mind, for example, if you want to help students with a particular tense, you can then set the story in the past or the present or the future. And what you would, the vocabulary you would bring in would determine what kind of setting or story you have. And then you design the puzzles around it, or not so much puzzles, but mystery, basically, just to have an engaging story. So the one that I've just suggested, for example, involves you suddenly waking up and where are all the people gone and how did I get to this place? Mm-hmm. You can do it with a small group of learners very easily, or if you have a larger class, what I would do is break them into groups, and each one of them takes it in turns to say what they want to do.
Okay, thank you, Graham. This is quite interesting, and I'm sure teachers will be intrigued to try out this escape room concept in the classrooms. Thank you, Graham, for being with us today, and thank you to the viewers for watching the video. We encourage you to try this out with your students as well and adapt it wherever you can. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thanks, Stephanie.